Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're headed to a place so secretive it rivals Area 51 for whispered conspiracies.
Oh.
Pine Gap, Australia.
Pine Gap.
You've sent in a ton of research on this joint U.S.-Australian facility.
Okay.
So let's sort fact from fiction.
Right.
What do we actually know about this place, in the middle of the outback?
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
This facility is officially all about satellite communication and signals intelligence, but it's become a magnet for speculation.
Right.
About everything from hidden underground cities to, yes, even UFO activity.
Okay, so before we get to the juicy stuff,
Right.
let's lay the groundwork.
Okay.
What's the official story on Pine Gap?
Officially, Pine Gap is operated by a mix of U.S. and Australian agencies.
Okay.
The Australian Defense Force, the U.S. CIA and NSA, even the National Reconnaissance Office.
Wow.
Their stated mission:
Yeah, what's their stated mission?
to support intelligence and military operations globally.
Okay.
Global.
And how do they actually do that? What's going on at Pine Gap, like, on a day-to-day basis?
It's all about signals intelligence. Think intercepting and analyzing electronic signals. A lot of them.
A lot of signal.
Pine Gap monitors a third of the globe,
Wow.
including places like China, North Korea, parts of Russia, and the Middle East. That means they're likely picking up everything,
Like what?
from military communications to internet traffic, emails, forum posts, the works.
Oh, wow. So basically, if you're sending an email from Beijing or making a call in Moscow, there's a chance Pine Gap is listening in.
It's certainly within the realm of possibility.
Great.
They have the tech to do it, and it's part of their stated mission.
Right.
To identify targets using electronic signals.
Okay.
Think about the unique signal coming from your mobile phone.
Right.
That can be used to pinpoint someone's location anywhere in that massive coverage zone.
And I'm guessing that's where things get a little murky.
Yeah.
Because knowing someone's location is one thing,
Right.
but what happens next?
Yeah.
Is Pine Gap involved in more than just gathering information?
That's a great question. And it's where the official narrative starts to get overshadowed by speculation.
Okay.
There are a lot of whispers about what really goes on at Pine Gap, activities that go way beyond simple monitoring.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity.
Okay.
Let's dive into those whispers, shall we? What are some of the most common rumors about Pine Gap? And is there any truth to them?
Well, one of the biggest mysteries is the sheer scale of the facility,
Okay,
or at least what people believe is the true scale.
right.
We see a few hundred personnel working above ground,
Yeah.
but eyewitness accounts describe supply deliveries that seem way out of proportion to that number.
Like what kind of supplies?
Right.
Talking extra paper clips for the office, or something a little more unusual?
Think of massive amounts of food,
Yes.
luxury furniture, even hotel-grade supplies. It's as if they're equipping a five-star resort in the middle of nowhere. And that, of course, has fueled speculation about a vast underground complex beneath Pine Gap.
A secret underground city. Okay, now we're getting into some serious X-Files territory.
Right.
But why would they need such a massive hidden facility?
Right.
What would they even be doing down there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the theories range from the plausible to the downright outlandish.
Okay.
Some suggest it's a backup command center for use in case of a major global conflict.
Oh.
Others believe it houses advanced research labs, perhaps developing new surveillance technologies, or even, let's just say, unconventional weapon systems.
Unconventional weapon systems.
Yeah.
Now, we're really venturing into science fiction territory.
Yeah.
But honestly, with a place like Pine Gap, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a few tricks up their sleeve.
And that's part of what makes Pine Gap so fascinating, isn't it? The line between fact and fiction blurs, and it becomes hard to tell where the truth ends and the speculation begins.
All right, so we have this potential secret underground city. But the rumors don't stop there, do they?
Right.
What are some of the other strange things people are saying about Pine Gap?
Well, there are claims from people who say they worked at Pine Gap,
Okay.
alleging that staff are sometimes hypnotized to erase memories of certain projects.
To wipe their memories. Now, that's a plot twist I wasn't expecting. What kind of top secret activities would require such extreme measures?
That's what fuels the speculation, of course.
Right.
It implies activities so sensitive, so compartmentalized, that even those involved can't be trusted to retain the information. It's like something straight out of a spy thriller.
So we have a potential secret underground facility,
Right.
possibly housing advanced tech or weapons.
Yeah.
And then we add in claims of memory wipes.
Yeah.
It's starting to sound like Pine Gap is less about signals intelligence and more about, well, something straight out of a science fiction novel.
And we haven't even touched on the most popular theory yet.
Oh.
The alleged connection between Pine Gap and UFO activity.
Okay, this is where I really want to hear the details. UFOs and Pine Gap. Tell me everything.
Well, let's just say that the Australian outback has a surprising number of UFO sightings.
Okay.
And many of them seem to cluster around Pine Gap and the nearby town of Alice Springs.
So we're not talking about your typical blurry lights in the sky kind of sightings.
Not exactly. We're talking about multiple eyewitness accounts describing structured craft, sometimes with very specific details. Shapes, sizes, even unusual movements or behaviors. And some of these sightings are pretty hard to dismiss, especially when they come from seemingly credible sources like pilots, police officers, and even large groups of people.
All right, you've definitely got my attention. Let's hear about some of those specific sightings. What kind of UFO activity has been reported around Pine Gap?
Let's start with a case from 1975.
All right.
Imagine you're on a small passenger plane flying near Pine Gap. Suddenly, you and the 89 other passengers witness a bright white disc shooting skyward from the facility,
Wow.
disappearing into the clouds.
What?
That's exactly what happened to a group of people flying near Pine Gap that year.
90 witnesses.
90 witnesses.
That's not just a random blip on the radar, that's a significant number of people all seeing the same thing.
Exactly. And the reports get even stranger. In 1980, 2 police officers were on patrol near Pine Gap when they saw 2 cigar-shaped objects heading toward a nearby hill. But instead of flying over it, the objects seemed to enter the hill as if it opened up to let them in.
What?
Then, just as quickly, the opening disappeared, leaving the officers to wonder if they'd imagined the whole thing.
A hill opening up to let in UFOs. Okay, now that is straight out of a movie.
Right.
But it gets even weirder, right?
Right, there's plenty more. We have hunters seeing a luminous disc emerge from a hill in 1989. Then in 1998, there's a wave of UFO sightings over Alice Springs, many described as star-shaped or triangular. Suddenly, it's not just discs and cigar shapes. It's a variety of UFOs, all seemingly drawn to the area around Pine Gap.
So we've got this top secret facility with rumors of a hidden underground complex.
Right.
And then layered on top of that are all these UFO sightings.
Yeah.
It's like someone took all the ingredients for a conspiracy theory stew and dumped them in the Australian outback.
I like that.
But here's the big question.
Yeah.
Is there any official acknowledgement of this UFO activity? Has the Australian government ever commented on what people are seeing around Pine Gap?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
When people started filing Freedom of Information requests about UFOs in Pine Gap, the Australian government's response was, let's just say, a bit suspicious.
Oh, really?
They claimed to have lost all the relevant documents.
What?
Every single one.
Lost. Come on, that's almost too convenient. It's like they're practically begging people to speculate.
Right. It's hard not to see that response as a giant red flag. What are they hiding? And why are they so reluctant to even acknowledge the possibility of UFO activity
Right.
near one of their most sensitive facilities?
Well, I guess that's what we're here to unpack, right?
Yeah.
To sift through the rumors, analyze the evidence, and try to make some sense of what's really going on at Pine Gap.
Exactly. And believe me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to uncover as we delve deeper into the mysteries surrounding Pine Gap.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got all these strange stories swirling around Pine Gap, whispers of a secret underground city, claims of memory wipes, and of course those tantalizing UFO sightings.
Right.
It's hard to know what to believe. How do we even begin to separate fact from fiction?
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a real challenge.
Yeah.
We need to approach this with a healthy dose of skepticism, but also keep an open mind. After all, the truth is often stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to a place like Pine Gap.
Right. So how do we strike that balance? How can we as listeners be critical of the information out there without just dismissing everything as a conspiracy theory?
It all comes down to evidence.
Okay.
Let's take those UFO sightings, for example. We have numerous eyewitness accounts, some from very credible sources, pilots, police officers, large groups of people.
Right.
But what's lacking is corroborating evidence, photographs, videos, radar data.
I see.
Without that, it becomes very difficult to prove or disprove what people claim to have seen.
So you're saying that while those eyewitness accounts are compelling,
Yeah.
they're not conclusive proof of alien spacecraft buzzing around Pine Gap.
Exactly.
Okay.
Human perception can be unreliable, especially in unusual situations.
Right.
People might misinterpret what they see,
Yeah.
especially if they already believe in UFOs.
Right.
It's possible that some of these sightings could be explained away as misidentified aircraft, weather phenomena, or even hoaxes.
That makes sense. But what about those sightings that defy easy explanation? The ones with multiple witnesses, all describing the same strange event,
Right.
and where there's no obvious conventional answer.
Those are the cases that really make you wonder. And they're the ones that deserve further investigation.
Okay.
Not necessarily to prove the existence of UFOs, but to understand what people are seeing and why.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with a place like Pine Gap, getting that kind of in-depth investigation is next to impossible.
All right, so we have to take the UFO sightings with a grain of salt. But keep an open mind.
Right.
What about those other rumors? The ones about what's happening inside Pine Gap? The claims of hypnotism?
Right.
The massive underground antenna? The whole secret city idea?
Okay.
Are any of those more plausible than others?
Well, those rumors are even trickier to evaluate because
Yeah.
they often rely on anonymous sources or alleged leaks.
Yeah.
It's difficult to verify the credibility of that kind of information.
Right.
Some people might have motives for spreading rumors.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Whether it's for attention, to sow distrust, or even just for entertainment.
So we need to be extra careful with those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're not saying we should automatically dismiss them as false.
Right. Right. We have to remember that government secrecy and covert operations are a very real thing.
Right.
Just because something sounds like a conspiracy theory doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right.
Think about all the things we know about government programs that were once considered crazy conspiracies. Things like MKUltra and Area 51.
It's like that saying, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest takeaway when it comes to Pine Gap. We need to be critical thinkers.
Yeah.
But also keep in mind that our understanding of what's possible might be limited. The world is full of secrets.
Right.
And some of them might be stranger than we can imagine.
So what are some ways we can be more discerning when we hear these kinds of stories, not just about Pine Gap, but about anything that sounds a little too out there? What are some red flags to look out for?
Well, one big one is reliance on anonymous sources without any corroborating evidence.
Right.
If a story hinges on someone told me, or I heard from a guy who knows the guy, be very cautious.
Okay.
Another red flag is cherry-picking data or ignoring evidence that contradicts the narrative. Always look for multiple perspectives and sources of information.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
And it applies to so many things we see and hear these days, not just stories about Pine Gap.
Right.
So how do we apply that critical thinking to the specific mystery of Pine Gap? We've got these conflicting accounts, these tantalizing rumors, but no concrete answers. How do we even begin to make sense of it all?
It's a challenge, for sure.
Yeah.
One way to approach it is to look for patterns and connections between the different pieces of information we have. For example, the rumors of a massive underground facility might seem far-fetched at first.
Right.
But then you factor in those eyewitness accounts of unusual supply deliveries, huge quantities of food, luxury furniture, things that don't make sense for a small above-ground staff.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the idea of a hidden complex becomes a bit more plausible.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
So by looking at these seemingly unrelated details together, we might start to see a bigger picture emerging. Are there any other examples of this kind of connecting the dots when it comes to Pine Gap?
Well, consider the alleged memory wipes.
Okay.
That might seem like something straight out of science fiction. But then you think about the nature of Pine Gap's work signals intelligence, surveillance, potentially even covert operations.
Yeah.
These are activities that require a high level of secrecy.
Okay.
So in that context, the idea of taking measures to protect sensitive information, even through extreme methods, becomes a bit more understandable.
That makes sense. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah.
And while some of the pieces might seem strange or out of place on their own, they start to make more sense when you see how they fit into the larger picture.
Right.
But even with all this speculation, we still haven't answered the fundamental question. What is the true purpose of Pine Gap?
Right.
What are they really doing out there in the middle of the Australian outback?
That's the ultimate mystery, isn't it? And it's a question that might not have a simple answer.
Right.
It's possible that Pine Gap's purpose has evolved over time,
Okay.
that what started as a signals intelligence facility has expanded into something far more complex and multifaceted.
So we're left with more questions than answers.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
But I think that's what makes this topic so fascinating.
Right.
It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge that there are still things in the world that we don't fully understand.
It's like we're standing at the edge of a vast uncharted territory.
Yeah.
We can see the outlines of something big and mysterious.
Yeah.
But the details remain shrouded in mist.
That's a great way to put it. Pine Gap is this enigma
Yeah.
wrapped in layers of secrecy and speculation.
Right.
And as we've seen,
Okay.
it's a place where advanced technology intersects with unexplained phenomena,
Yeah.
where the line between fact and fiction gets incredibly blurry.
It's definitely a place that sparks the imagination.
Yeah.
But even if we never get definitive answers about everything that goes on at Pine Gap,
Right.
I think this deep dive has highlighted something important.
Okay.
It's made me think about the importance of critical thinking and media literacy,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to information about things that are inherently secretive or controversial.
Absolutely. We live in a world where information spreads at lightning speed.
That does.
And it's easy to get swept up in sensational stories or conspiracy theories.
So true.
But as we've discussed, it's crucial to question our assumptions, evaluate the evidence,
Right.
and be wary of anyone claiming to have all the answers.
Right. It's like that old saying, if
Yeah.
it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yep.
But on the flip side,
Yeah.
we also have to be open to the possibility that reality might be more complex
Absolutely.
and surprising than we initially assume.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
It is.
We need to be skeptical without being cynical,
Yeah.
curious without being gullible.
I like that.
And I think that's especially important when it comes to topics like Pine Gap,
Right.
where there's so much we don't know.
So how do we apply that kind of thinking to our own lives?
Right.
What are some practical steps we can take to be more discerning consumers of information? Not just about Pine Gap, but about everything.
Well, first and foremost, it's important to diversify our sources of information.
Okay.
Don't just rely on one news outlet, website, or social media feed.
Right.
Look for information from a variety of perspectives and pay attention to the biases of different sources.
That's a great point. It's so easy to get stuck in an echo chamber.
It is.
Where we're only exposed to information that reinforces our existing beliefs.
Right. And it's also important to develop our critical thinking skills.
Oh.
When you encounter a new piece of information, ask yourself, who is presenting this information? And what might their motives be? What evidence do they have to support their claims?
Right.
Are there any alternative explanations?
Those are all really important questions.
They are.
And I think it's also crucial to be aware of our own biases.
Absolutely.
We all have preconceived notions about the world.
We do.
And it's natural to gravitate towards information that confirms those biases.
Yeah.
But it's important to challenge ourselves to consider different perspectives.
It is.
Even if they make us uncomfortable.
Couldn't agree more. It's that willingness to step outside our comfort zones.
Yeah.
To question what we think we know.
Right.
That allows us to grow and learn. And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe that open-mindedness will lead to some amazing discoveries.
Right.
Just like those scientists and engineers working at Pine Gap, pushing the boundaries of technology and exploring the unknown.
Well said. It's a good reminder that there's still so much out there that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's something to be excited about, even without definitive answers.
Right.
The mystery surrounding Pine Gap serves as a reminder to stay curious.
Absolutely.
Question everything.
Yeah.
And never stop exploring. Who knows, maybe someday more information will surface.
You never know.
Those lost documents will reappear.
Right.
Or someone with firsthand knowledge will step forward.
Maybe.
Until then,
yeah,
we can keep speculating, keep researching.
Keep that curiosity going.
And keep looking up at the stars.
Exactly. The search for truth is an ongoing journey.
It is.
And even if we never reach the final destination,
right,
the exploration itself is incredibly rewarding.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mysteries of Pine Gap.
It was my pleasure.
And to all our listeners.
Yes.
Keep those questions coming.
Yeah.
You never know what secrets we might uncover together.
That's right.
Until next time.
Yes.
Stay curious.